Hi there. So thank you for coming. My name is Jeff Ragusa. This session is going to be a little bit different. I think maybe a little bit of a context switch from some of the other sessions y'all have been at the past couple of days. We're not going to go over code samples. We will touch on some of the Google Apps APIs a little bit, but hopefully we'll have some good material to hold your attention regardless of background. I have a feeling that we have a pretty diverse crowd. So I'm coming from a business development role at Google, but kind of prior to that, in the past 8 years or so before Google, I was a web application developer and enterprise software engineer, and so hoping that that'll buy me some street cred from the developers in the room. But we'll have to figure that out maybe by the end. So what we're talking about today, first of all, Google Apps. How many people are familiar with Google Apps? Raise your hands. Awesome. So we'll talk a little bit about Google Apps, just give an intro to level set, make sure everybody's on the same page. But primarily what we're going to talk about are the opportunities for developers and IT consultants, for VARs, and just generally Google enthusiasts for growing a business around the market's uptake, adoption, interest in Google Apps, particularly the small business segment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that from Google's perspective. Then we've got a couple of our great partners. There we are. Who are in the crowd, and they're going to come up and give their insights as well. So first thing I want to do is just give top-line intro of Google Apps. Apps is our suite of tools for making communication and collaboration easier within the context of an organization or team. And it's constantly changing, which is one of the things or constantly growing, which is one of the things that's most exciting about working with it. But currently consists of these tools. Gmail is a big part of it with embedded instant messaging. Google Talk, Calendar, Docs, spreadsheets, and presentations. Google Sites, if you're not familiar, it's a relatively new service for building collaborative team websites and making that easier. Start Page, which is similar to iGoogle, if you're familiar with that. And then a set of tools around security, discovery, archiving, and compliance around messaging, primarily email. So it's all these tools hosted by Google, no infrastructure required, accessible through a web browser. I'm sure you know the drill there. But one of the key things is that it's branded by the organization. So in other words, in the case of email, if a company's using firstname.lastname at mycompany.com email addresses, they can continue to use those email addresses, but have it on the back end be powered by Google, powered by Gmail. Another key thing is on interfaces and administrative APIs. Even though this is hosted by Google, the idea is that you can integrate it with existing systems inside the firewall as well as other hosted systems, whatever the company happens to be using. It's meant to be highly interoperable, so you can have some of these services turned on, some of them disabled. You can have some users using apps, some users using other systems, and have those users be able to work together seamlessly. Last thing I'll say is around adoptions. Has been out for over a year, 15 months or so now, and I'm happy to say we're at a run right now of over 3,000 organizations daily that are signing up and coming on board with Google Apps, and today we have over 10 million active users, and that's active by Google's definition of active, which is pretty stringent. So we're talking to companies of all sizes, some of the largest companies in the world, but as you might imagine, small businesses, it's caught on like crazy with small businesses. So from there, I just kind of want to take it up just one level and talk about a couple of the trends, and we'll see why this is important later. But a couple of trends that are underlying this. Consumerization of IT is something that you're probably familiar with or probably at least heard of. From my perspective, this really relates to the notion that, say, 40 years ago or so, employees at high-tech companies had access to the latest gadgets and gizmos and the most expensive cutting-edge technology while at work, and then they'd go home and have to fiddle with the rabbit ears and their black and white TV and find a way to make that work. Somewhere along the line, that completely flipped, and more recently, we're in a situation where those same employees at some of the largest companies in the world are struggling with enterprise legacy applications and brittle integrations between those applications. And then they go home, and TiVo's recorded their favorite TV shows, and they can use Google.com to help their kids with their homework. And they've got their fancy iPhones and virtual reality games and such. So one of the movements that's going on is to flip back in the other direction slightly, where a lot of this consumer-driven innovation is flooding back in toward businesses and helping businesses to run and operate. And that's really what we're talking about. This really plays into Google's strengths because we've traditionally and ongoing, Google's got a huge focus on consumer web services. And now we've got an enterprise group, which I'm a part of, that's basically taking Google Apps and some other Google applications and taking those into businesses. And so it's really, you kind of see this microcosm within Google of this consumerization movement, and Google Apps is at the heart of it. The other thing is around cloud computing and software as a service, SaaS, which I'm sure you've heard about. But this really relates to the idea that companies' data and applications all reside in the cloud, and they're accessible anywhere or on any device on which you can run a web browser. So kind of one way to really give an idea of the conceptual power of cloud computing. This is a book called The Big Switch, which came out not too long ago, I think late fall, early winter, by Nicholas Carr, where he draws an analogy between the rise of cloud computing and cloud computing utilities like Google today and the rise of electrical utilities 100 years ago. So, and he's more eloquent than I am, so I'll just do if you bear with me for a second, I'll kind of read through this. So what made large-scale electrical utilities possible was a series of scientific and engineering breakthroughs. But what ensured their triumph was not technology, but economics. By supplying electricity to many buyers from central generating stations, the utilities achieved economies of scale and power production that no individual factory could match. It became a competitive necessity for manufacturers to hook their plants up to the new electric grid in order to tap into the cheaper source of power. The commercial and social ramifications of the democratization of electricity would be hard to overstate. He goes on to say, today we're in the midst of another epochal transformation, and it's following a similar course. What happened to the generation of power a century ago is now happening to the processing of information. Private computer systems built and operated by individual companies are being supplanted by services provided over a common grid, the internet, by centralized data processing plants. Computing is turning into utility, and once again, the economic equations that determine the way we work and live are being rewritten. So I'm going to be too dramatic, but kind of sit on that for a second. So apps obviously falls directly into this software as a service model, and is able to leverage that model for a whole host of advantages. I've listed just some of the most obvious ones here. Economies of scale causing cost advantages that are enormous and that are growing every day. Reliability, you're probably aware Google's consumer services, Google.com, can't tolerate any sort of downtime. People use Google.com to determine if their networks are up. If it's down, the internet must be broken. Anytime, anywhere accessibility, universal accessibility is a big part of Google's mission. Real-time communication and collaboration. On the one hand, this is like instant messaging and real-time presence information and that sort of thing. A little more subtly on the collaboration front, if you've ever used Google Docs and have been editing a document at the same time that somebody else is editing that same document in another room or in a different city, and you see those changes show up in real time, that's a real eye-opener usually for people when they first see that, an eye-opener to the power of this model. It's a little bit trickier to do that in a client-server or in a kind of peer-to-peer model. Data security and access control, this is a really big topic. I'm not going to get into it too much here other than to say that Google firmly believes and has a lot of evidence to back up the fact that sensitive corporate information is a lot more secure on Google servers with application-level access control than it is scattered throughout corporate desktops and server closets. And then rapid feature release. We're able to take product feedback and turn around and release product functionality literally overnight, and we're able to do that and iterate on that. We'll take a closer look in a second at how we've been able to do that over the past 15 months. So when you put it all together, so we think we've got something pretty special with apps. A lot of people are noticing, obviously the press, the blogosphere, as you might imagine, but it also goes back to those 3,000 organizations a day that are coming on board that I mentioned earlier. So that's great for Google. Yay us. Probably sitting there by now, 8 minutes into this thing, wondering, what's in it for me? Again, we have a varied crowd, but I think there are tremendous opportunities for service providers, which includes a bunch of different types of folks, from solution providers, IT consultants, developers, and so let's talk about some of that. So I've been traveling around for the past 10 months or so talking to solution providers about Google Apps with all kinds of different backgrounds and points of view. But this is a typical response that I'll get. So this guy he's been serving customers locally for a long time. Typically he builds computers, he diagnoses network failures, he's got a bunch of certifications in traditional technology, CompTIA-like stuff, routers, server management, things like that. He knows how to quickly remove the crapware that comes installed with newly shipped PCs, that kind of thing. And he's got a lot of long-time, very loyal customers who depend on him and who trust him for a lot of IT decision making. So he says, not going to work. Great, sounds great, Jeff, but my customers aren't going to go for it. That's for somebody else. So I'll sit down with this guy, and we'll circle back through a lot of the things that we just talked about. We'll walk through demos, but a lot of times it'll come down to something just as simple as this, where we look at this and there's a range depending on the studies or depending on who you listen to. But for just an on-premise email system, when you take into account hardware and software, managed support, training, and those kind of things, you're looking at $300 to $1,000 per user per year. If you take Google Apps, which has email and these other services that I went through in the beginning, and you look at $50 per user per year, which doesn't include the professional services, but even if you double or triple that, there's a significant cost savings. I say, if you take this and you put that in front of your customers, do you think that he or she might want to at least listen to more and delve a little bit deeper? So then, usually the response to that kind of varies, but a lot of times it's something like this, and it's said in a little bit of a quieter tone. Jeff, okay, listen, my customers would love Google Apps, but I've got a guaranteed pipeline of steady income coming from installing, upgrading, migrating, retraining my customers every 3 years when their current software licenses expire. Basically saying, I've got to put food on the table. So think about that in the context of the things that I was just talking about around consumerization of IT and cloud computing. This guy, and really this is pervasive, right? There's a whole community of folks out there who are betting their business on inefficiencies in so products that cost more than necessary, products that are harder to use than necessary, that are harder to administer than necessary, and that use a delivery model that's more complex than necessary. So these are all the efficiencies I was just talking about. They're going away as cloud computing takes reign. So it's not sustainable, right? Something's got to give. You guys are betting their businesses on inefficiencies. Now, the IT industry IT services industry isn't going away. It's huge, and it'll continue to play a huge role in the future. But what's happening, my point is that it's changing, and not everybody is going to change with it, and not everybody's going to change at the same pace. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for people who recognize what's going on. There's a window of opportunity for them. If they recognize it now rather than later, or maybe it's a little bit more obvious, they can take advantage. And we're going to take a look at how. Now, not everybody has that reaction, and the buzzword of the day for probably the last couple of years has been, the buzzword of the day in the IT services industry has been managed services. And so this is really embodying the shift that I'm talking about. But the people who are embracing managed services, they're selling something different, right? They're not selling kind of purebred technology break-fix services. I'm going to install this software for you, and I'm on my way. What they're selling is technology services, but wrapped in what I'm calling business guidance advisory services. So they're selling business results, and a lot of times it'll be wrapped in that last line there: proactive support as opposed to reactive, holistic. So your hardware, your software, your network, I'll take care of all of it for you, worry-free, at a flat rate. So for $12,000 a year, $15,000 a year, whatever, I'll take care of your IT needs, and it'll include not just Google stuff, but it'll include everything. And again, worry-free. So in that scenario, you can imagine that model. Now efficiency becomes your friend, right? You're going to get paid regardless of how many hours you put in. So if you can find a product that's rock solid, that's innovative, that brings great value, and you can just you can cash in by just taking that product, bringing it to your customers, and helping them adopt it in the right ways. So great. We'll worry this animation won't work. So this is just a scrolling list of the updates and enhancements that we put into Google Apps over the past 15 months. Kind of impressive when you look at it like this, but customers can't keep up with this. Right? They can't keep up with this level of innovation, of that churn. I talked about the software as a service model and allowing us to constantly be pushing out new features and enhancements. But solution providers are folks who can amortize that cost across multiple customers, and also folks who are interested in working with this stuff to begin with. Maybe they're at Google I/O. They kind of have at least a passing interest in what's going on at Google. We have a blog that actually allows you to kind of keep up with this stuff, and then allows you to dig deeper. How does this work? Let me try it out, and that kind of thing. So solution providers can keep up, and imagine a scenario where as a solution provider, you sit down with your customer at the beginning of every month, and you go over maybe some usage reports from the last month, and you go over these features that have come out from Google over the past month, and then you figure out, okay, how can your employees use these features? How can we message them to them? How can we go through training? How can we get them to adopt these features so that your company is getting the best out of Google Apps? That seems like a pretty simple service. People will pay good money for that, and it's because they can't keep up. So that's just one small example. Here's some other examples of some services that solution providers are seeing some success with. just real quickly going through them. Basic account setup, provisioning users, DNS record management is a big thing that you kind of have to do when you're initially setting up Google Apps, and it trips up a lot of customers. On the customization front, there's a web-based admin console where you can configure services organization-wide, do UI branding and that kind of thing. Bidirectional synchronization tools. There's tools for bidirectional sync of calendar and email contacts now, I believe, also. And so if you know where these are, how to use them, how and where to apply them, there's a lot of value that you can provide there. Mobile clients, setting up POP desktop clients, that sort of thing. Interoperability in general is a pretty big area. Data migration, so primarily at this point, email history migration. There's a half dozen ways to get mail into Google, and there's a mail insertion API that you can actually use if none of those things suit your fancy and you're inclined to use APIs. Training. So this is both kind of training administrators and end users, but really what I see the value here is bridging that gap between what folks were using before and how do I do this in Gmail or in Calendar, and they're using terminology that that Google doesn't use, and so it's like there's a period where your creativity and experience can kind of bring out and bridge that gap and provide a good deal of value, and it's the kind of thing that we can never surface as part of a training module on Google.com. We don't have that info. So for developers, the next couple. So custom application development, or what I'm primarily talking about is gadgets. So I don't know if you've noticed by now, but gadgets is really a central, are becoming more and more central part of our application integration story at Google, in particular our enterprise application integration story. We'll talk more about gadgets in a minute, but there's a lot of opportunity for creating business-focused gadgets for apps. And APIs, same thing. We'll talk more about these as well. The opportunities for integrating with existing systems. On the remote administration and help desk front, again, a lot of our solution partners manage 30 customers, and they're literally running the administration. They've got logins into the admin console, and they're administering those customers for them. And on the support front, Google doesn't do end user support for Google Apps Premier Edition, the paid edition. So there's a lot of opportunity there to provide value, comprehensive support that Google could never provide. You won't be competing with Google. And then on the reselling point, so we don't have open reselling opportunities for Google Apps right now. We have a limited referral program. But what we do have is a partnership program that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, where you can connect with us and you can keep up to date on all these services, including reselling opportunities, as we move down that path. So on the gadgets front, so I said gadgets are kind of everywhere. They're not just in iGoogle. Gadgets are embedded in. You can embed them in Calendar. You can bind them to spreadsheet cells. They're embeddable in Google Sites pages. This is an example of Google Apps personalized start page for a company where it looks similar to iGoogle. Down the left, we've got a series of Google built gadgets for your inbox and doc list, contact list, calendar, that kind of thing. But then the center and on the right are custom built or third-party applications gadgets, exposing an RSS feed of company announcements. In this case, my sales team is using Salesforce.com gadgets to expose and allow you to manipulate inline opportunities and forecasts. To-do list application from Remember the Milk. And then also kind of bottom right, People Finder, being able to access an LDAP directory and service that, phone number lookups and that kind of thing. The point here being that gadgets can actually access data from both inside and outside the firewall. I think a lot of people kind of don't quite get that. But they can, and the other thing is obviously gadgets can be themselves interactive applications, or they can be jump points to other web applications or other client-server applications. Ton of things you can do in gadgets, and what I wanted to say, we have a public gadgets directory that's got tens of thousands at least of gadgets in there. Most of them are not business-focused gadgets. Most of them will be useful to companies, or useless to companies using this. But one of the interesting things, when you hit Add Stuff on the Google Apps Start page, you come into this view, which kind of looks like the public Google Gadgets directory, but there's actually a company-specific directory that you could build as the administrator by pulling gadgets from the public directory and/or by creating custom gadgets. And you can see in this case, there's been a bunch of gadgets that were created custom for this organization, and it allows employees to click that, go in here, and see the specific gadgets that are useful to, are applicable to their jobs. So there's a lot of value, and I think you'll see over the coming months, you'll see a lot more focus from Google's enterprise group around building enterprise business-focused gadgets, because there's definitely an opportunity there for developers. So on the API side, you're probably familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with Google Data APIs and the Calendar API and Spreadsheets API. Docklist API, those are completely applicable to Google Apps. If you've got applications using those APIs, there's a really good chance it'll work seamlessly with apps. There's very few semantics around what is public in the Google Apps context. But there's a bunch of other APIs, some GData and some not, that are applicable here. They may be a little bit less known. User provisioning API to tie to a user management system. Reporting API for reporting on usage and quotas. On the email side, I mentioned earlier the mail insertion API. If you can get at mail programmatically, if you can discover it programmatically, you can use this API to push it up into Google. A mail gateway interface, which is interesting, is that you can actually put an MTA outside of Gmail, where all incoming and outgoing email from a particular organization goes through this transfer agent. You can do things like you can filter or implement policy management or archiving or anything like that. Custom authentication interface. You can hijack the Google sign-in page and provide a custom sign-in experience using an LDAP server or something more complex. Like you can use certificates to allow silent sign-on or some kind of crypto card-based auth system. And then I mentioned kind of the GData APIs rewrite access to calendar events and spreadsheet cells, documents, and contacts. One thing that's not on here is IMAP. I mentioned you can insert mail. You can retrieve mail via just Gmail's built-in IMAP interface. And, of course, gadgets, which I talked about. Okay, so we're doing on time. Okay, so marketing. So one of the big things for developers especially is around, okay, this is great. Kind of want to do some of this stuff. I want to do some of this stuff. You're crazy. I don't really want to do. But how do I find customers? Let's say I did want to do this. Customer acquisition, marketing yourself, marketing your business can be a big showstopper or a question mark for developers. So I'll go through just a few suggestions, not meant to encompass all, but we just launched this solutions marketplace about a month and a half ago. There's a specific subset of that's specifically dedicated to apps, and the idea here is that developers who are building products on Google APIs can market those products, can describe those products here and market and connect directly to customers, and then service providers who are providing services can do the same. There's a set of rich media that you can use to describe. In this case, so Viruswoman, Crisantos from Viruswoman is going to come up and talk a little bit. Here you can see they've concisely described a service, pricing information in line there, which is important for customers to know what they're getting into. But he's also sending his customers here to not only set up reviews, but also ratings, but also reviews, where they kind of provide detailed write-ups, and those are important for customers to figure out, can I relate to this? Is this really what I'm looking for? He's also got YouTube videos. So Crisantos is actually, he's actually got a whole line, if you look down the right-hand side, a whole line of YouTube videos talking about different topics as they relate to Google Apps in a really colloquial way. He looks like he's in some kind of a hotel room or something. You can explain that. But so customers can relate to this. And if you listen to the videos, they're definitely colloquial. And this is the kind of thing that can show thought leadership. If you maintain a blog, that's another way of doing the same thing, and really differentiate. And then Google Checkout, allowing customers to directly take action. Success stories are huge, and we're actually maintaining a customer success story blog that kind of complements the marketplace. And as you can see, if you can concisely describe a customer success story where here were the challenges, we came in, here was the solution we provided, here were the results, ROI, quotes from the customer, that kind of thing. We can promote it here, and you can link to it. This is actually SADA Systems, and Tony will come up and talk a little bit from SADA. This is a little bit about their experience at Northwestern University. So some other things. So web search tends to get a few eyeballs here and there. When I was putting this together, I searched for Google Apps Los Angeles, and lo and behold, Crisantos' video, the video we just saw, shows up first result. So you can actually, particularly when you talk about a local context, you can really jump to the top by creating a little bit of content. Continuing that local theme, Google Maps has local business search integrated in, and so in this case, I'm basically drilling down to the greater Los Angeles area. I just do a search for Google Apps or Google Apps services, and I see a bunch of bubbles pop up, and turns out that both Viruswoman and SADA here today are both based in that area not too far apart. They both show up 1, 2 in the results, and their service descriptions show up, and they can collect customer ratings and that kind of thing. last thing, so talking about online marketing, you got to mention AdWords. One of the frustrating things for folks who are for the partners that I'm working with around apps is there's a finite set of things that you can use to describe your app services. There's a finite set of keywords around a lot of things that I'm talking about today. It's significant, but it's not infinite. And so when you're bidding globally, you can kind of get frustrated in the bidding wars. But when you turn to local targeting, that can really change the game significantly. And a lot of people aren't aware that you can do local targeting with AdWords. In this case, if you look at the green box on the right, I can actually just sit down and draw a polygon for like this is the area that I want to target, and then my bidding will be commensurate with users coming from that area. And I think it looks at their IP address as their browser. So another idea. So I want to get these guys up here to talk a little bit. But the last thing I want to talk about was this all sounds great. I want to do some or any of this. How do I connect with Google? How do I work with Google? It's pretty simple. So we've got an entry-level partnership program for Google Apps, and the idea here is it's a free program. We'll provide materials, a lot more detail on a lot of stuff that we're talking about today, to allow you to delve in and free, so you can decide how much investment you want to put in. Is this working? Am I getting customers? Am I driving revenue off of this? Supposed to cover all aspects of the business, and this is of course dynamic. We'll grow this as we see the need, but marketing materials, sales tools, product training, technical support, that sort of thing. Google.com/a/smallbiz/providers. I think we'll maybe throw this slide in at the end, but /a/smallbiz/providers. And really what that is, it's centered around a resource site. So we're using Google Sites, where there's a number of things. So a getting started guide, how do I get spun up, how do I start to use the product and get started. A provider profile, you maintain your contact information, the services you provide, the customers that you're working with, and I'll get into in a second why that's important. The technical side, product training, technical support, discussion group, which I read like it's my personal inbox, and some other folks on the team as well. So there's service providers, solution providers that are having lively discussion on there, but then also you can find out the latest about Google features and about the features that come out with respect to apps, market topics, whatever comes up. Right, so more on the marketing pathways we talked about today. We can go deeper on that. Also, common objections. Customers tend to have the same questions, same objections. We got kind of Google official answers, and as you get other questions, we can get you additional answers to those. More on the service opportunities that I talked about, and the ability to connect with other solution providers to collaborate. And Crisantos is going to talk a little bit about this as well. But you've got a solution and it's maybe not complete. You want to provide this piece of the puzzle, but your customers need more, or customers in general need more, so you can collaborate on collaborate on complementary services. The other thing is actually we've got program level partners, folks that provide things to solution providers that you may not have thought about. So things like indemnity insurance is what came to mind when I was writing this up, where just something that you might need, especially if you're just going into business. And folks will be happy to provide that for you, as well as other marketing opportunities and that kind of thing. I mentioned the discussion group. There's for a closed group. It's growing pretty fast, and there's lively discussion. There's lots of common pain points that folks run into, and so being able to share those, and also Google's obviously reading this, and this is really the discussions and the solutions that come out of here are really going to shape the next level of our product development in this area in terms of working with partners in a channel and with a channel. So last thing, metrics. So this is important. So I mentioned this is an entry-level partnership program, and meant for you to kind of get started at your own pace. Question might come up: how do we take the next step? How do we engage with Google more deeply? Some of these things we're still trying to figure out. But I will say that we're committed on the partnership front to providing transparency in terms of your standing with Google. How much attention Google provides to you is really going to be transparently based on your performance. And performance along metrics like these, and this is dynamic, but basically things that make sense, right? Impact with customers, are you driving revenue? Adoption level of customers, are the users that you've been working with, are they signing in and actually using the product every day, or are they not signed in since February? If you're using the solutions marketplace, the ratings and feedback on there, success stories I mentioned. There's a user-to-user help group for Google Apps where thousands of administrators. Customers are there asking questions all the time. If you're in there answering questions, and providing quality content. We've got this is relatively new, like in the last week or two. I might be announcing it here for all I know, but we've got a new Power Poster rewards program that we're rolling out where based on the quality of your content, we'll have not just swag, but also product licenses, AdWords credits, things like that that can actually be useful to you. And then I mentioned the profile, your provider profile before, when you're talking about these are the customers I'm working with. That's really important. At this point, that's the only way for us to know who you're working with. And that, by us knowing which domains, in the case of Google Apps, you're working with, we're able to tie it into a lot of these other metrics. So it's really important that you keep that up to date, even if it's not changing. And then, so lastly, there's a bunch of things here, some things that we can do for you today, things that we're working on, things that we can do together. One of the things that I wanted to mention is under marketing assistance, participation in regional marketing events. Tony from SADA, who I'm going to bring up here right now, actually, just got back from New York not too long ago, where he was presenting at a couple of enterprise seminars on Google Apps and on cloud computing and on SADA and how their services can tie it all together. And so it's an example of the type of thing. He was basically representing Google at this event of CIOs and CTOs, et cetera. And so kind of thing you can get into as you work up your way through the program. So Tony's the CEO of SADA Systems. SADA's been a long-time partner of ours across search originally, before apps even existed, and now apps. And he's kind of become a bit of a thought leader in the cloud computing space. So I'm going to have him just basically talk a little bit about his perspective and SADA's perspective on all this stuff. You got a mic?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
All
right, thank you.
You use like the right arrow rather than the down arrow.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, so I just want to give you guys a little background on SADA as a company, where we started, so you can sort of see, does that match where you guys are now? Where do we come from? How did this all happen for us? And where we are. And then I'll talk about some of the challenges that we all have as partners and solution providers for really taking Google Apps and making it a mainstream solution that all organizations feel good about using as definitely an option to consider. So this is sort of how we evolved. We started in 2000, so have been around for a while by some standards. 3 areas we focused on: custom software development, general IT services, and IT procurement. We like to provide the equipment that we helped companies implement as well. We became a Microsoft Gold Certified Partner in 2003, and that's sort of partly why Google was interested in working with us in the beginning, because a lot of the implementations that we were going to go into had some Microsoft infrastructure already in place. And for a lot of implementations, coexistence is very important. So that was actually, it worked in our favor in this case. So and really around that same time, as Jeff mentioned, sort of managed services. Before it was even called managed services, we had an idea of using efficiencies to our benefit, getting out of the hourly billing game, which can only be so effective, and changing the paradigm so that we're more profitable when clients are most stable, because that makes sense. It makes you align with the client's objective, which is they want to be stable. They're most profitable when they are stable. So why make the most money when clients are in trouble and need help? So this managed services concept, we sort of got into the works in 2003 under different scenarios, and then that services has evolved and is still a big part of what we do, managed services. And of course, recurring revenue is something that is good for every business. So as Jeff mentioned, we started with Google in 2006 in search, and that was sort of a big decision for us, because it was quite expensive to become a Google partner at the time. But we made the decision to make that investment, because we felt like you can't go wrong partnering with Google. And in 2007, as Premier Edition was going to be launched, we were approached to put some service packages together, do some preliminary work with Google hand in hand. I remember talking to Jeff for the first time about this. And we became one of the first 10 Google Apps partners worldwide who were part of their big PR push and launch. So it was, I think, about 7 companies that were US-based, 3 European, and so we became one of the first 10. So that got us a lot of notoriety, definitely. And almost immediately, we got contacted by Northwestern University, which is a big name. So It was a lot of pressure to do this right and to actually land a project in the first place. And I remember during one of the initial calls, they were saying, so we want to implement Google Apps for our students. Have you guys done this before? And of course we hadn't. And I remember my answer was like, well, nobody's done this before, so we're okay. So it ended up being quite well. Went to 3 phases, and they rolled it out, and they're very happy and are still a big referral source for us. And then Google was happy because Northwestern was happy. So then shortly after, they really saw the challenges that big organizations had in deploying Google Apps. Google did. And they said, they need something out there that's really self-service, free, open source, that large organizations, universities can download, just do a little bit of customization and be able to deploy tens of thousands of accounts at the same time. So whether it's universities here, worldwide, they can't really afford, tens of thousands of dollars in services to get up and running. There may be, a university in, Nepal, and with 50,000 students, they want apps. How do they do that? So they brought us on board to build this open source provisioning toolkit, which is now available on code.google.com, as we're the initial contributors to that. And it's been downloaded hundreds of times. We have a virtual appliance that people can just download. They can spin it up in a virtual environment, and with some modification in the config file, they can be up and running and provisioning accounts in seconds. So that was huge for us as well. And really since then, we've just had an immense amount of inbound interest in our services around Google Apps implementation. And our whole challenge has been, how do we productize these services to very simple, easy to buy, as cookie cutter as possible with customizations, of course. How do we make our services easy to buy for organizations and affordable? So we're doing a lot of that now, and we've had a lot of initial success, but it's something we continuously have to evolve around. So, why do we do it? Why do we start with it in the first place? Hindsight's 20/20. It's great, but a lot of those objections that Jeff talked about with the guy with his arms crossed, those are the things we were thinking about. Why take the chance on Google and then something that is previously just a consumer product? So our thought was, look, there's a huge implementation installation base of Exchange or some other mail servers out there, but Gmail is pretty cool. It's different. Web applications is something Google has a lot of expertise around. So let's learn this so we can continue to provide what we feel is best of breed for every implementation. A lot of IT companies are vendor exclusive. I'm an HP guy. I'm an IBM guy. I only do, Sun. We've never been that way. We've always been sort of vendor neutral. So we said, we want to expand our best of breed portfolio. That was our first initial instinct. And, this was around the time where it came out, Google was the #1 brand in the world. We said, okay, at the very least, we'll at least can have our name and do a press release with the #1 brand in the world. So that's going to be good. But, we knew and we felt, with Salesforce making such a huge impact on the enterprise, and for a lot of organizations, if you sell to the Fortune 500, you have validity in your solution in the IT space, and then you try to bring it to other markets. So Salesforce, made software as a service an acceptable platform, a enterprise class platform, because they were buying it. The enterprise was buying it. Therefore, software as a service was, becoming sort of the paradigm shift was on its way. And we said, this is probably going to introduce a lot of opportunities, and we wanted to jump on that with Google Apps. And we felt like Google Apps was the right partner to get software as a service and platform as a service right. I have to say they haven't disappointed, in the way they have developed a really rich set of APIs, so many opportunities to develop custom solutions around their product set. With Google App Engine now, which is a whole platform as a service, we felt like they would be the right partner in this endeavor. And almost most importantly, Google doesn't have a services organization. It's really about product development. As somebody said in one of the Google meetings, I don't want to misquote the person, but it was one of the enterprise team that said, we're like Walmart. We want to bring the best possible solution at the lowest price, but we can't help you, sort of take care of it once you've bought it. It's your thing. How can we do it for $50 per user per year otherwise? We can't provide a whole help desk, and we can't help you customize it. We can't do that. That's why we need partners. So, if we can't align ourselves with them, then really the opportunities would be endless. And we've been a gold certified partner with Microsoft forever, and Microsoft doesn't know who we are. We felt very engaged with Google from day one. I mean, we talk to them now almost every day. We felt like they really listened to us, and that's really the kind of partnership that you need. Just because we don't do $100 million of Microsoft software, licenses every year, we're really not on their radar. I mean, we do a lot of Microsoft work. We do great work. Very happy clients. We're gold certified, the highest level of certification you can have with Microsoft, but they don't know who we are. Well, Google does, and they really are partners in our success. And mostly, there is a change. There's a change in IT service delivery and how people think about technology, the big switch. And every time there's change, there's bound to be opportunity. So IT departments are changing in terms of the type of people that are there, in terms of how it's aligned with business versus how maybe before it used to not be. Economies of scale in service delivery are changing immensely. There's really sort of an industrial revolution happening in IT. It's not so much, the world will always need craftsmen. There's still blacksmiths out there who make custom horseshoes and fit them to horses. But, production has really gone to a sort of industrial age, years ago. Now that's happening with IT as well. So you're not going to need a guy to administer your email much longer. Things are changing. Tools of collaboration are becoming ubiquitous and more powerful than ever. So anybody who's done Microsoft work, SharePoint's great, but God, it's so resource intensive. I need 4 servers and I need to do all this stuff, and it's like, why can't I just share something with someone like within a couple of seconds? And Google got that and has been building it that way from day one. And this is sort of my personal thing. Sort of the misstep I believe Microsoft had with Vista, and sort of all the momentum that Apple was able to gain, I think, started to make people realize that, look, it's not all about the operating system. In fact, the operating system one day will be kind of irrelevant, right? It's the browser. It's use any application on any platform, just make it web-based. So we knew that was happening, and that got us thinking in creative ways. Web applications got more powerful. You could do more on the web than ever before. And, we thought we could only ignore these things at our peril, right? We'd have to be silly not to engage with sort of what's next. Just like I felt we were kind of early on with the managed services paradigm, there's a new paradigm shift. And really, if you think about it, what we're doing is, reading the writing that's on the wall. And it's there. And a lot of IT companies don't see it today. And we feel that if they don't see it, they'll be less and less relevant as the world changes. So, what do we get? What does this all do for us so far? And what has happened for us? Well, of course, all the PR and recognition. You couldn't buy this with sort of the opportunities we've had in implementing Google solutions. We couldn't touch the kind of clients that we've gotten by not partnering with Google. A lot of revenue generated through an opportunity channel that is sort of just sort of is we do very little outbound to get Google Apps business. It sort of comes to us because there's just not that many partners who can do what we do. It really made us something for the first time. It really made us specialize, in something very important and very rapidly growing. And we became all of a sudden a bigger fish in a relatively small pond. We never had a real hardcore specialty before. We were more generalists in IT services. We believe in 2008, 30 to 40% of our services revenue in 2008 will be driven by Google Apps opportunities. And Google Apps opportunities can derive other opportunities in IT services, and we count all of that. For instance, before you implement Google Apps into a sizable organization, and they want to have their users authenticate on Active Directory, and they want to continue to manage Active Directory as their source of user information. If their Active Directory is a mess, guess what? Somebody has to clean that up. So that's how it generates a lot more revenue opportunity than the actual Google Apps implementation itself. And really we get to be aligned with one of the most exciting spaces in the industry. I think this is software's where it's at. Software as a service is where it's at. Google's where it's at. It's very exciting to be in this position. But, I'd love to be able to say, we're done. I'm retiring next week, and, we've sort of, all our work there's nothing more to do, but really we're just getting started. And for all of us, who are interested in doing these things and bringing these solutions to fruition, how do you get recurring revenue out of Google Apps implementations? That's something that we're trying to create models for. Great, you do this one-time project, and now you remove these Exchange servers that you used to charge for managing every month. How do you make up for that? And we have different models for how we're thinking about doing that. A lot of the stuff that Jeff talked about. The future, it seems, is not about charging a fee to manage a thing, like a server or a laptop, but it's really to manage the IT experience for employees and for users. And it's more, soft skills oriented. It's more about user experience in general, using tools as business tools, rather than is my server on or off? Is it up or down? It seems to be moving in that direction. How do we stay relevant ourselves, or how do any of us stay relevant? Really, as Jeff mentioned, they have all these metrics. Really, we feel like every Google Apps implementation has to be successful. We have to produce the results. We have to help provision as many Google Apps accounts as possible and make sure they're active and happy users. How do we help Google add value? Google, how do we make it so that they need partners and continue to do so as they evolve? How do we cover our basis? I'd love to say that client-server applications are dead, networks are irrelevant, security doesn't matter anymore, firewalls, who cares? It's just not the case. So we have to learn how to go into environments and make Google Apps or another software as a service application exist in another environment that has a lot of legacy built into it. And that's a real challenge, but Google is actually addressing that with a great set of tools like the calendar connector they released, which allows Exchange users and Google Apps users on the same organization to see each other's free busy information in real time. That was a huge hurdle for a lot of organizations. They said, well, we can't, make all of our users Google Apps users. We can make 80% of them Google Apps users. But if we do that, now how do the two sets of users book appointments? They don't have free busy information they can share. So Google has addressed that in very innovative and interesting ways. You can check that out. I think it's called the Google Calendar Connector. And they continue to put more and more stuff out there. And of course, we're sort of the mouse dancing with the elephant. How do we get stomped on? Not only by what Google might do in their evolution as a company, but by the other big solution providers out there. We're very small in comparison. We think, we're always trying to not work on something that we think Google will come out with in the next month. We don't want to make that tool that is so obvious and try to make $20 a pop from selling licenses for something Google's not going to make free next week. And Google, won't tell you what they're working on. They say it's because they don't know what they're working on. So we don't know. I mean, that's the story. But so we have to be very, very careful in terms of that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Nice. Good job, man. So, okay, that's not so. And then lastly, I want to bring out Crisantos, Hajibrahim.
Yes, sir.
From Viruswoman. So Viruswoman, Crisantos has been very enthusiastic about apps, and we've been working with him for almost a year now on helping to define the program and a lot of the things, a lot of the messaging that I was giving you today originally came out of this guy's head, and maybe out of that hotel room. I don't know.
I know you guys are probably bored. You guys are probably sitting down. I know it's cutting into your time. How many guys out there know what a VAR is? Can anybody see a hand? Who knows what a VAR is? What's a VAR, sir? Value-added reseller. How many guys didn't know what a VAR was? Just raise your hand. If you don't know what a VAR was, raise your hand. How many guys are developers? All right, okay. So, exactly what this gentleman said, a VAR is a value-added reseller. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to try to run through this real quick. Value-added reseller is somebody who takes what you guys develop. You guys make these cool little things. I don't know how to make them. Oh, sorry. You guys make these things, and we turn around and we sell them and attach some type of service, and we make a fee. I need you guys. And sometimes I feel, and I didn't do all the little cool tricks they did on their little PowerPoint. I just, here, you guys look at it, read it. But from my perspective, when I look at a developer, I see you guys as somebody like this, somebody who can sit still for hours. I cannot sit still for hours. How many of you guys can sit still for hours? Somebody who sleeps all day and works at night. Does it remind you guys of anybody? Somebody who's going to cost you a lot of money. Every time I think I need something, I need a developer involved, I know it's going to cost me money. I know that it's going to cost me money. And I also realize, because I'm always in front of the customer. Remember, I'm always dealing with the customer. The programs that you guys develop, I'm always in front of them. They always see me. But I'm always thinking, I'm like, who the hell designed this? Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But who designed this? Did you guys put in mind what this end user looked like? Or what he knows? Did you think about his competencies? Did anybody think about that? I always ask myself that. And somebody who only has to develop one program to get rich. Just one. This will never happen to a VAR. How many of you guys out there want to be rich? Does anybody want to be wealthy, successful? All of us, we all want to think of this. Napoleon Hill said this one important thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who want to be rich. But what are you willing to do for it? Like if I asked you, if somebody would really raise their hand and say, yeah, I want to be rich, and I went up to you and I asked you, what are you willing to do for it? I bet you wouldn't have the answer for me. I bet you wouldn't. From a VAR's perspective, we lack the necessary skills to develop Google Apps software, right? And again, we're talking about Google Apps. We're dependent on Google Apps software solutions that may meet, the customer's needs. So, I see software programs out there on the Google for Google Apps, but they really don't necessarily always work. But I can't go develop a program. Sorry. I can't always go develop that program. So I'm dependent on what's out there. At the same time, software price points. If your price is too high on your program, I'm not going to resell it. And I could give some examples. If you want to hear some examples, come meet me after the meeting. I'll tell you some companies. But from a developer's perspective, I see from my side that you guys lack the necessary face time with the small business customer. You don't really have a feel for their pain. And remember, pain equals opportunity. Remember that. Always remember that. Is there anything you guys learn here right now? Pain equals opportunity. And you lack the necessary resources to provide real sales and real tech support. Not this email tech support. My parents are the baby boomers. They have all the money. I don't know who else you'd want to be targeting than people with money. They don't like email tech support. They want somebody who will answer the phone because that's what they like. And I know a lot of companies like doing that email stuff, but they don't like it. But that gives me opportunity as a VAR. I can say, look, I'll take this software. You want to use this software? I'll provide the support for it. Because I know a lot of you guys probably have your little websites out there that all you guys do is email support. But customers like that stuff. Now, how can VARs and developers help each other? This is one of the things I like you guys. I wish I had your knowledge. I really do wish I had your knowledge. I wish I had the patience to sit still and develop stuff. But I don't. So, Google Apps VARs can be the sales force for the developer community. You know how many VARs are out there? You know how many VARs? Your computer guy, the big guy, the guy who drives the truck, or maybe the little guy. There's a lot of VARs out there who can't develop code. But they have all the face time, just like what Jeff said. They have their loyalty fan base. So imagine you develop a piece of code, and you're like, how am I going to get it to market? The VARs, and remember, the VARs can speak your language in a certain sense. They understand what you're talking about compared to if you're trying to explain this to an end user or that upper management who just doesn't seem to get, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't understand you, but he's in charge of you. I don't understand that sometimes, but it happens. VARs become a channel to communicate to the developers the opportunities and the needs of Google Apps customer base. So if you're in relationship with these VARs, they know what's going on. They're like your eyes and ears out in the front line. If you have a relationship with them, you can say, look, there's an opportunity. This is not out there. It's not out there. And remember, we live in America. We're a capitalistic society. It's all about opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity with Google Apps. I swear to gosh, I've worked with some of the biggest companies. I've talked with them. I see their models. Google Apps, remember, what's going on right now? We're in a recession. right? Companies don't want to spend money. They want to do more with less. And Google Apps answers a lot of those problems. And like they're a big company. This one guy, I remember when I first started working in the IT industry, he told me, he's like, Chris, you don't need to go after the big fish. Go become friends with the big fish and suck off them and live off them. And I hold that, it's true. Go be friends with the big fish. Live off them. But all I'm trying to say is, there is a lot of opportunity for developers and VARs. And I know it's just, you guys are on one side of the planet, they're on another side of the planet. But the collaboration between the two can provide huge opportunity. I don't even know how many more slides I have left. Okay. The solutions marketplace. Jeff was talking about the solutions marketplace. Where are you going to find these VARs? What are you going to open up your telephone book? Are they going to be in the telephone book? You can try the Google. Just type in computer repair. See how many VARs pop up on there. Those are all VARs. They don't make anything. They didn't design the hard drives. They didn't write the code. But I tell you what, VARs have a very hard time because they got to know about everything. They're like general practitioners. They're doctors. They got a little grasp, a little bit of everything. But there is a lot of VARs on the solutions marketplace that Jeff's talking about. And it's on there, and you can see them, and they'll sell anything. They'll sell anything. As long as it works and it meets the objective of the client that they service. Remember, it's their client. And they will get in front of the client, your product, easier than you will. Because those clients trust them before they trust you. Because they have that working relationship. Hits a price point that brings value to the customer. Remember, you guys everyone talking about reoccurring revenue. That's the whole thing. Well, let's make money and sit on, watch TV. And we'll make money. If you can do it, great. But the gadgets will make those things, like helping with mail migration, calendar. I only see, there's opportunity in the CRM market. And you guys, I know there is. There's opportunity. And bring service revenue to the VAR. What do I mean by that? You got to let the VAR make his money. If you develop software and you're not thinking about the VAR will kill you. All I need to say, that program sucks. And that customer will never look at it again. I'll say, this one is better. That's all I need to do to destroy your little program or product that you come out with. That's it. And we all chat. Like, I'm not a blogger. I just barely got into it. But they all blog and they talk about weird stuff. And all they got to say, this program's good. And next thing you know, boom. There you go. There's your recurring revenue. Now you can sit on your couch and not work. That's what will happen. But I really believe there is a lot of opportunity working with VARs, developers, a symbiotic relationship. I remember this from science class, so I use that word. I was impressed with myself. The Google Apps Marketplace, and I'll leave with this because, again, I need water. There's a lot of opportunity. A lot on Google Apps. I've worked with small business. I love small business. I like selling to them. I really do. I really do because, they're at your mercy, whatever you tell them. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I really don't. I really don't mean it in a bad way. I know Google, the name, the product, it's all web-based. They're not going to call me. See, VARs think the other way. I'm not a typical VAR. I don't want you to call me because then I'll find something else I can sell you. I can sell you phone service. I can sell you internet service. So I'm not worried about them losing all this other revenues because there's always more. Remember, the world is always giving. Always giving. It will never run out. There's always enough to go around. I swear there's enough to go around for everybody. But if you put in the mindset, how can I help these people? How can I help them? What can I give them? I swear the world will give back to you. You cannot come at it from an angle of, I want to make money. I don't think that'll work. But that's a whole different topic for another day. But Google Apps, I promise you, there's opportunity for the developer community. And we really need you guys to develop stuff for Google Apps as a VAR because I need to sell stuff. So I want to thank you guys, and thank you, and Jeff's coming back. And
Q&A.
Well, so we, I think we actually ran over a little bit. We got like 30 seconds left, so I want to give opportunity for the next group to set up. So while that's happening, we'll stay in the area here and take questions off the mic. I do have to say we have a repeat session of Under the Covers of the Google App Engine Data Store that'll take place at 3:15 in room 8. And all these sessions, this session, excluding the fireside chats, will show up on the I/O website by mid next week. And there's evaluation forms that you can fill out if you get a chance, and leave that in the
all right, cool. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.